Have you ever wondered why so many people suffer because of love? Why do we enter relationships only to break them apart in search of something we never truly find, or even worse? Why do so many people remain stuck in unhappy relationships, unable to leave even when they know deep down that their soul is suffocating? Pause. If you've ever felt that being alone might actually feel freer than being with someone, but you were afraid to admit it, this message is for you. If you've ever lain beside someone and still felt an emptiness echoing inside you, this story was written for you. Today we're going to step into a truth that society avoids at all costs. Carl Jung, one of the greatest psychologists in history, revealed something deeply unsettling. In most cases, it is better to be alone than to cling to a partner. Not in the shallow way many people imagine, not in cynicism, not in rejection of love, but in a deeper transformative sense. His insight was not about isolation, but about understanding why chasing the perfect relationship can be the greatest illusion of your life. And I promise you this, if you stay with me until the end, you will never look at romantic love the same way again. Pause. From the time we are children, we are told we will only find happiness when we discover our other half. Fairy tales, soap operas, love songs, Hollywood films repeat the same story. But have you ever stopped to ask what that really means? The idea suggests that alone we are incomplete, that our existence lacks value unless it is confirmed by someone else. Jung warned us about this dangerous misunderstanding. He insisted that human beings spend their lives searching outside for what can only be found inside. And here begins the problem. When we fall in love, we rarely see the other person for who they truly are. Instead, we see our own desires reflected back at us. We see the security we long for, the recognition we crave, the purpose we secretly lack. We project our hidden needs onto another human being, and we call it love. But what happens when this projection collapses? Pause. Sooner or later, it always does. The fantasy fades, and in that painful moment of awakening, we realize the truth: we were not loving the real person beside us. We were in love with a fantasy, built inside our own minds. And when the fantasy crumbles, we face two choices. The first, to confront reality and acknowledge that no one else can fill the emptiness we carry. The second, to cling desperately to the relationship, pretending nothing has changed, terrified of being alone. Most people tragically choose the second. That's why the world is full of relationships that look alive on the surface but are hollow within. How many people do you know who live in the trap of passionless partnerships? How many couples sit side by side without love, without growth, without joy, yet still remain together because they fear the silence of solitude even more than the pain of staying? Jung reminded us whatever we suppress eventually becomes our shadow. And in love, this shadow leaks out in destructive ways: jealousy, control, emotional dependence, fear of abandonment. The more we search in others for what we lack within ourselves, the more we become prisoners of our own dissatisfaction. But why do we keep falling into the same trap? Because society trains us this way. The cultural script is clear. If you feel sad, find someone. If you feel insecure, find someone. If you feel empty, find someone. The world tells us to seek a partner as medicine for every wound, but nobody teaches us how to be whole on our own. Pause. Here's the great irony. The more we chase relationships to fill our inner voids, the more likely we are to attract partners who are also incomplete. Two half-souls don't make a whole. They create a cycle of neediness, dependency, and disappointment. Instead of love being a choice, it becomes an addiction. So let me ask you a question. Few dare to answer honestly. Do you truly love the person beside you, or are you simply afraid of being alone? If the answer is the second, Jung was right. It is better to be alone than to cling to someone out of fear. Because genuine love, the kind that liberates instead of enslaves, can only exist when two people freely choose to be together. Not because they need each other to survive, but because they desire to share what they already are. But how do we reach that point of authentic love? The first step isn't searching for the right partner. The first step is looking inward. Modern psychology supports Jung's insight. Studies on emotional dependency show people who enter relationships to avoid loneliness report higher levels of anxiety, conflict, dissatisfaction. By contrast, Individuals who cultivate self-acceptance and inner stability before entering relationships tend to build healthier, longer-lasting bonds. In other words, love thrives not when we are desperate for completion, but when we are already whole. So ask yourself, have you ever felt lonely in a relationship? Have you ever looked at the person next to you and thought, who is this stranger I once thought was my savior? Or maybe you've realized that the love you thought you had was only a reflection of your unmet needs. If so, know this: you are not alone. This happens to far more people than we think. And maybe this is the greatest mistake we all make in love. We've now seen why Carl Jung believed the pursuit of an ideal partner is often an illusion. But this is only the beginning. Because the next step is even harder, we must explore what happens when those illusions collapse, when we are forced to confront the truth, that we are not really searching for another person at all, but for the parts of ourselves we abandoned along the way. Are you ready to face that truth? Because once you do, love will never look the same again. Let's go one layer deeper into the moment when the illusion cracks and the mirror turns back on us. Jung called it projection. We cast disowned parts of ourselves onto someone else and mistake our reflection for their reality. At first, it feels like destiny. Later, it begins to feel like suffocation, and then one day, the spell breaks. Pause. Imagine Elena. She's 52, married nearly 3 decades. When she met Marcus, she felt an immediate spark. He was confident, decisive, strong. Everything she thought she wanted in a man. For years, she believed he completed her. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, admiration turned heavy in the chest. His confidence began to feel domineering, his decisiveness like a lack of empathy, his strength like a winter chill in the room. And then a quiet realization surfaced: what she worshipped in him was something she had longed to awaken in herself: her own courage, her own clarity, her own firm choices. Rather than develop those qualities, she outsourced them to Marcus and called it love. Pause. That is projection in action. Jung said that what we suppress, positive or negative, does not disappear. It appears in others. We meet a person and feel they are exactly what we've been missing. But sooner or later, the projection dissolves. The shining prince becomes human. The perfect partner reveals imperfections. The image we attach to them flakes off, and beneath it stands a person with their own history, flaws, and limits. The collapse of the fantasy feels like betrayal, but it is actually an invitation: meet the truth or cling to the dream. This is why so many relationships enter crisis after a few years. We say the other person changed, but often it is we who finally see. Is the partner truly at fault, or did we paint them with an impossible ideal? Society teaches us to hunt for what we lack, not to share what we already possess. And so we approach love like a transaction. Be the safe place I cannot create for myself. Be the affirmation I cannot give myself. Be the purpose I have not yet discovered. It sounds like love, but it is need, and need unacknowledged turns love into a fragile bargain. Pause. Think about the stories we've absorbed since childhood. We applaud the character who says, "With you I feel important. With you I finally feel loved." It's beautiful on screen and dangerous in life. Because if your sense of worth depends on someone else, you are handing them the keys to your inner world. The moment they falter, your foundation collapses. True love is not the plaster that fills our inner cracks. It is the sunlight that helps us grow beyond them. Jung's principle is uncompromising. Healthy relationship is possible only when two people are self-sufficient before they come together. If you require another person to feel okay, then what you're calling love is actually self-rescue by proxy. That doesn't mean we don't need connection, we do. It means connection thrives when we are grounded enough to choose, not compelled enough to cling. Here's a hard truth. Loneliness is not the absence of company. It is the absence of connection. You can be married and feel invisible. You can be surrounded by friends and feel misunderstood. You can lie next to someone you adore and feel the dull ache of distance. Staying with someone solely to avoid being alone is the most painful form of solitude. Culture reinforces the fear. If you're single after 40, something must be wrong. If you end a marriage, you failed. If you haven't found the one, you're not trying hard enough. But does that story hold up? How many couples do you know who live like roommates, managing logistics instead of sharing life? How many people mute their desires, dim their voice, and call it compromise, when it's really surrender? Pause. Ask yourself, have I ever stayed because leaving felt scarier than disappearing inside my own life? Have I ever mistaken the absence of conflict for the presence of love? Have I ever accepted less because I feared the silence that would follow? When fear drives our choices, our shadow drives our relationship. Jealousy, control, emotional dependency. The desperate need for reassurance, these are not signs that we love too much. They are signals that we love from a wound. The more we demand another to fix what we refuse to face within, the more we become captives to our dissatisfaction. So what do we do with this? If so many relationships are built on projections and illusions, can we ever love for real? Jung's answer is clear: individuation, the path of becoming whole. It is not a self-help slogan, it is a rigorous inner practice. Individuation asks us to meet our shadow, to integrate the qualities we've disowned, to grow the very strengths we used to rent from partners. When we do, love stops being a search for completion and becomes an overflow of what we already carry. Consider Elena again. When she recognized her projection, she didn't demand Marcus change to fit her new understanding. She chose a different experiment therapy to build her own assertiveness, small daily actions to practice decisive choice, honest conversations about boundaries and needs. The strange thing happened: her resentment softened. Whether the marriage lasted or not became less important than the truth she was living. She was no longer asking Marcus to be her missing piece. She was becoming the missing piece herself. Pause. Modern research echoes Jung's view. Family systems theory, Bowen, and attachment studies show partners who maintain self-definition, who can hold on to themselves while staying connected, report lower conflict and higher intimacy. Emotional fusion feels romantic at first, but differentiation sustains love over time. In plain words, two strong ice make a stronger we. This is not a call to isolation, it's a call to integrity. It's not about never needing anyone, it's about not outsourcing your wholeness. Paradoxically, when you stop using love as anesthesia, love stops numbing you and starts waking you up. You become easier to trust because you're not trying to extract your identity from someone else. You become easier to love because you are not negotiating for constant proof. So pause with me and listen inward. What qualities do you most admire or resent in your partner? Where might those qualities be invitations to develop something inside yourself? Have you stopped asking another person to carry your unlived life? What small, brave step would you take this week to live it? Perhaps that means speaking a boundary without apology. Perhaps it means booking the class you keep postponing. Perhaps it means telling the truth you've swallowed for years. Each step is a stitch that repairs the separation between who you are and who you pretend to be. And here's the quiet miracle: when you start becoming whole, one of two outcomes unfolds, both of them good. Either the relationship deepens because the fantasy no longer has to hold everything in place, or the relationship ends with honesty instead of blame. In both cases, you move from captivity to choice. This is the threshold Jung points us toward love, as a free decision between two complete people, not a bargain between two frightened halves. If that sounds radical, it is only because the culture around us is addicted to the easier story, the one where someone else does our inner work for us. But you are capable of more. You are capable of seeing clearly, choosing bravely, and loving without a chain in your hand. So ask yourself one final question for today. If the projection fell away tomorrow, and you saw the person beside you exactly as they are, could you love them freely without needing them to complete you? And just as important, if you looked in the mirror and saw yourself exactly as you are, could you begin to complete what you've been searching for in others? When you can answer yes to both, you are no longer chasing love. You are ready to meet it. We've reached the turning point where illusion ends and something far more profound begins. Jung called this journey individuation, the process of becoming whole. It is not about rejecting love, but about transforming the way we approach it. Instead of using relationships as a patch for our emptiness, we begin to live from fullness. Love shifts from desperation to generosity, from demand to choice. Pause. Individuation means learning to integrate our shadow, the parts of ourselves we deny fear or hand off to others. When you finally face those hidden corners, you stop demanding that your partner carry them for you. You no longer need someone to complete you, because you recognized that what you sought outside was always within. And when two whole people come together, the relationship is no longer a prison. It becomes a sanctuary for growth. Think of how this works in practice. Someone who always sought validation in others learns to affirm themselves. Someone who relied on their partner's decisiveness learns to cultivate their own inner authority. Someone who used love as a distraction from loneliness learns to sit with silence until it feels like peace. These are not abstract ideas. They are the concrete steps of individuation, the inner scaffolding of authentic love. But society doesn't reward individuation. Culture tells us being single past a certain age is a flaw. A breakup is a failure. Solitude is a punishment. The pressure to pair off is relentless, yet the truth is stark. Being with the wrong person out of fear is far lonelier than walking alone in honesty. Pause. Modern psychology reinforces Jung's insight. Take Bowen's family systems theory, which shows that emotional health in relationships depends on differentiation, the ability to stay connected while maintaining your own identity. Without it, relationships collapse under the weight of fusion and dependency. Or consider attachment research. People with secure attachment, those who are comfortable both with intimacy and with independence, consistently build the most resilient bonds. The science echoes what Jung already knew. You must first belong to yourself before you can belong with another. You may have witnessed this in life. Have you ever seen someone after a painful breakup transform completely? They begin exercising, traveling, picking up new hobbies. They learn to enjoy their own company. And then almost effortlessly, they meet someone who feels like a true partner. Why? Because they're no longer searching for someone to fix them. They are simply sharing the life they've built. That's not dependency, it's abundance. This brings us to another shadowy truth. Love often mutates into possession. What begins as affection can easily twist into control. Jung warned us about this unconscious drive to own the person we claim to love. We want them to be ours, to think and act in ways that make us feel secure. But when love becomes possession, it ceases to be love. It becomes fear, disguised as care. Pause. Consider Anna and Miguel. At the start, their relationship pulsed with passion, but over the years, Miguel grew uneasy when Anna spent time with friends. His comments seemed small at first. "Why do you need to go out so often? I don't think your friend is a good influence." Slowly, almost invisibly, Anna withdrew from the people and activities that once gave her joy. She shrank piece by piece until her life revolved almost entirely around Miguel. He never shouted. He never locked the door. But the message was clear: her freedom was a threat to their love. And so, she gave it up. This story is not rare. It repeats in countless variations. Sometimes it's guilt trips, sometimes subtle criticism, sometimes emotional withdrawal until the other person conforms. And many of us participate without realizing it, convincing ourselves we're protecting love, when in truth, we're strangling it. Why do we do this? Fear. Fear of losing them. Fear of not being enough. Fear that if we don't tighten the rules, they'll slip away. But here's the paradox: the more we grip, the faster they drift. Jung insisted real love exists only in freedom. Love cannot be guaranteed. It is not a contract sealed by vows or promises. It is a choice made fresh every day. And like any true choice, it cannot be coerced. Pause. This idea unsettles us because it dismantles the illusion of security. We want guarantees. We want certainty. But love is not a possession. It's an invitation. Imagine what would change in your life if you believed this: that love only thrives when you allow both yourself and your partner to remain free. That your partner is not a cage to keep you safe, but a space to help you grow. That being together is not a deal struck once, but a choice renewed again and again. Modern neuroscience gives weight to this idea. Studies on autonomy in romantic relationships show couples who encourage each other's independence report higher satisfaction and longer-lasting love. Suppressing freedom doesn't strengthen bonds, it corrodes them. Authentic connection arises when two people support each other's individuality, not when they dissolve into each other's shadows. So pause and ask yourself, have you ever given up pieces of who you are just to avoid conflict? Have you silenced your voice, abandoned your dreams, shrunk your freedom in the name of love? If so, was it really love, or was it fear wearing love's mask? For Anna, the answer came in a moment of clarity. After years of shrinking, she realized she had lost too much of herself. One evening, after a trivial argument, she found the courage to speak. "I can't live like this anymore." Miguel insisted she was overreacting. He claimed his behavior was only love. But Anna recognized the truth: this wasn't love. It was fear. And for the first time in years, she chose freedom. Pause. Whether that freedom led her back to herself or to a different life altogether mattered less than the fact that she reclaimed her choice. The lesson is universal. Authentic love cannot be built on possession. It is not about chaining another person to our fear. It is about standing side by side in freedom and still choosing to stay. The greater the freedom you allow, the stronger the bond becomes. And when you stop trying to own love, you finally begin to live it. But this raises an even deeper question. If love is not possession, then what is it? What does love look like when it is free, when it is whole, when it no longer grows out of fear, but out of truth? The answer may unsettle you, but it may also liberate you forever. We've now unraveled so many illusions: the myth of the missing half, the trap of projection, the prison of possession. If all of these are not love, then what is? How do we build something that can endure not out of fear, but out of freedom? Pause. The first step is deconstruction. We must dismantle the false beliefs we've inherited about love. From childhood stories to cultural scripts, we've been told that love is a fusion, that it requires sacrifice, that being single is failure. But when you examine these stories closely, you see how much fear they carry. Fear of being alone, fear of inadequacy, fear of rejection. Jung would say these are not truths, but shadows passed down through the collective unconscious. They shape our lives until we confront them and choose differently. Ask yourself, what beliefs about love have I absorbed without ever questioning them? Do I secretly believe that being alone means I am unworthy? Do I equate love with constant sacrifice? Do I think commitment means losing my individuality? If so, these are not natural laws. They are illusions you can release. Pause. The second step is integration. This is where individuation comes alive. Integration means facing the shadow, owning the parts of yourself you've projected onto others, and learning to love them within. If you admire someone else's courage, practice growing your own. If you resent your partner's independence, look at why your own feels fragile. Each time you bring a shadow home, you reclaim a piece of yourself. The more pieces you reclaim, the less you need another person to carry your unlived life. And the third step is creation. Once you've deconstructed illusions and integrated your shadow, you can create a new foundation for love, one based not on need, but on choice. Love becomes a daily decision, not a desperate grasping. It becomes an act of freedom, not a transaction of fear. This is the essence of authentic love. Two complete people choosing every day to walk together, not because they must, but because they want to. Pause. Modern science echoes this timeless wisdom. Studies on autonomy and well-being show people who maintain strong self-identities within relationships report higher satisfaction and resilience. Neuroscience research on oxytocin, the bonding hormone, suggests it deepens, not when we cling in fear, but when we trust and support independence. In other words, the bonds of real love grow stronger when they are not chains. Think of people you've known who flourished after embracing solitude. Perhaps you've seen someone step out of a long, hollow relationship and slowly rebuild themselves. At first, they struggled with loneliness, but then they discovered new passions, friendships, and self-trust. And then, without chasing, they met someone who fit not their emptiness, but their wholeness. This is the paradox. When you no longer need love as a crutch, you become most capable of giving and receiving it. So let me ask you, are you still searching for someone to complete you, or are you ready to become whole yourself? Because until you make that shift, every relationship will carry the same shadows. You'll repeat the same patterns, attract the same dynamics, and wake up with the same emptiness. But once you turn inward, everything changes. Love stops being a hunt and becomes a gift. You stop clinging to reassurance and begin to trust the flow of choice. Pause. And here's the most liberating truth of all: real love exists only where freedom exists. It is not measured by how tightly you hold, but by how freely you allow. It is not proven by sacrifice, but by authenticity. It does not hide in the promise of forever, but in the courage to choose each other today, tomorrow, and the day after that. Imagine if love were not about filling a void, but about sharing an overflow. Imagine a relationship where you never had to pretend, never had to shrink, never had to control. Imagine looking at your partner not as your rescuer or possession, but as a fellow traveler. Someone who walks beside you, not because you cannot walk alone, but because you both enjoy the journey together. That is real love. Pause. So here's the challenge. Before building a healthy relationship with anyone else, build one with yourself. Learn to sit with solitude until it feels like peace. Learn to recognize your shadow and invite it home. Learn to respect your own worth so deeply that love becomes a choice, not a necessity. Because if you fear being alone, every relationship will be an escape. If you do not know who you are, every relationship will be a mask. And if you cannot love yourself, every I love you will secretly mean don't leave me. But when you become whole, everything shifts. Love ceases to be a demand, it becomes an offering. You no longer need to control because you trust. You no longer beg for proof because you already know your value. You no longer collapse into need because you stand tall in choice. This is the freedom Jung spoke of, the love that endures, the bond that heals rather than wounds. So I ask you now, what will you choose? Will you keep chasing someone to complete you, repeating the same patterns, carrying the same illusions, or will you choose to become the person you've been searching for? The choice is not easy, but it is yours. And when you choose wholeness, you unlock the only kind of love that truly lasts. Because in the end, the secret is simple. The love you've always sought was never out there. It was always within you, waiting to be found, waiting to be lived, waiting to be shared.